decided to start signing the newest crop of local bands, and they found all these bands like Soundgarden, Green River, Mudhoney, and Nirvana showed up in town, and they signed them too. This was a real breakthrough, not only for those bands, but really for the whole scene. Suddenly you had the coolest new bands all on one label, all being marketed in the same way with the same look, the same photography, the same style of photography on their record jackets. And it was a brilliant stroke by the guys behind Sub Pop Records to push this movement, this scene. They weren't just hoping on one song by one band like a lot of labels will put all their eggs in one basket and go, boy, this is the song, it's make it or break it on this one song. They said, no, let's push this concept of the scene and the sound and the look, and boy, were they lucky to find Cobain and Nirvana, because that was the real breakthrough for them too.
After going to see the band perform live, Poneman decided that Sub Pop should release Nirvana's first single.
You know, Nirvana had 6 drummers over the course of their career, and they all had their strengths. Aaron was a powerful drummer, but you know, he wasn't exactly a punk rock drummer. He was more of a hard rock drummer. So eventually he had some personal issues, and they switched. And the first real drummer that stuck with them for a while was Chad Channing.
I got involved with it because, one, I liked what they were doing. I mean, there was something, I could tell there was something, you know, kind of special going on, you know, because when they gave me their demo tape that they did with Dale, and I was like, wow, this stuff's really cool. And one thing in particular that I especially like in music that I hear is relation with vocal melody lines over guitar, you know. I've never been so much as in, well, let's get all this great music together and then try to throw some vocals over it, you know. I'm really big into more of the melody line than anything else. And the way he kind of mixed everything up, you know, I was like, okay, there's some good talent here. You know, this is actually really cool stuff, you know, totally different. And that's what drew me into it. And so when I was jamming with them, you know, getting used to their songs and stuff like that, it was just like, I was just like, wow, this is cool, this is fun. You know, even though nobody said, okay, you're in the band, it was just kind of like, we just kept on having fun. And the fun rolled on, I guess.
Chad was very close to Kurt. I mean, these the early genesis of this band, I mean, these people were as close as brothers. They traveled the country together in a van. You know, they did 7 tours before Nirvana really broke. So, you know, this band, the sort of core of Channing, Novoselic, and Cobain, they were extremely close.
It was really good, I think, in a way that, especially in the beginning, because I'm a lot like him in the respects, like, pretty quiet, pretty shy myself, you know, especially when like meeting other people. I'm not a very forward type of human being. So, you know, a lot of it was very kind of warming up to each other. I think it probably took a while, because it was like, well, this guy doesn't seem to talk much, he's really, really quiet. And I'm thinking, well, Kurt doesn't seem to talk much and he's really quiet. So we got this kind of thing going on. But eventually, you know, those things kind of drop and stuff. And our relationship was really pretty fun. I always thought, you know, because we never got in each other's skins because we were always too quiet.
With Channing attached, Nirvana arranged to go back into the studio with Jack Endino. It was decided that Love Buzz, the band's most commercial song, should become the A-side of the single.
John Poneman at Sub Pop decided that he wanted to do a 7-inch with the band. And by then they had Chad Channing as a drummer. So the next recording session I had with them was in June of 1988, when we did the Love Buzz 7-inch and a couple of other songs, which later ended up on the Bleach album.
First show we had, Sub Pop had put the show on for us. And it was in Seattle at the Central Tavern. There were all but 12 people there. And I think that included Bruce and Jonathan from Sub Pop. And you know, we just kind of walked in, set up. It was kind of strange because I don't think there were any other bands playing. And we just kind of set up our gear and just, you know, powered through the set. And you know, a lot of the people that were there, you know, were like, you know, at the bar already, and they were drinking and stuff, and so there wasn't really much in the way of response or anything, but, you know, of course, Bruce and Jonathan came out and said, yeah, that was a great show, you know, it was really cool.
The band was a bit chaotic on stage, as were a lot of bands, and but they weren't chaotic like, you know, like the Clash or the Sex Pistols or something running all over the stage madly. They were disorganized. They were a lot of time went between songs. They weren't running a tight ship, and you know, a lot of bands play that way. But you know, later on they firmed everything up. They got a better show together.
We're probably the early days when we first went out on tour on our first single, because we didn't know what to expect. We actually asked Sub Pop was like, we want to go on tour, you know, even though we have this single, you know, we want to go on tour and set something up. We want to play around. And it wasn't like, okay, you guys are, you know, if you're ready to do a tour, we'll set this up for you. It was the opposite. We asked them. And so, okay, they're like, sure, they set it up. And so, and that made the tour very kind of, you know, touch and go. You know, like we, you know, hopefully make about $50 to, you know, get down to the next venue. And a lot of the times we'd stay at, you know, like rest stop areas or camping or stuff like that. So like on the road was kind of like, you know, that was sort of, we were like family on the road. You know, it's like there was no one else but us in that little white pill we called a van. I think around the time when I think Kurt and stuff, and we felt like we were getting big, probably, I mean, since we'd first heard ourselves on the radio.
And when the first single came out, KCMU had it, the college radio station, and I remember we had pulled over at a gas station in Seattle, and on our way home from Seattle, and he stopped to call the radio station to request the song so he could hear it on the radio in the car. And then he was just tickled pink, you know, he had the biggest smile on his face the whole time it was on.
Love Buzz was a huge underground success, and Sub Pop quickly sold their initial run of 1,000 copies. Kurt desperately wanted to record an album, but Poneman felt that the next step for the band should be an EP. A compromise was reached when Nirvana agreed to pay for the studio time to record Bleach, which Sub Pop promised to release as an LP.
They basically called me and said, well, we've got about $600 that somebody's going to loan us. We want to do the album ourselves. And Sub Pop wants to do an EP, but we want to do an album, so we just want to pay for it ourselves and then see what happens. Well, maybe Sub Pop will do it, maybe we'll get someone else to do it. So I said, okay, we'll have to work really fast. You know, that only gives us a few days of recording time. So we broke it up into chunks. We'd do like 3 or 4 hours at a time and work as hard as we could, and then they'd go home, and then they'd come back, and we'd do a few evenings. And that's how we ended up working over the holidays at the end of 1988. Nobody else wanted that particular studio time. So it was ultimately Sub Pop, who still wanted to do an EP. Nirvana wanted to do an LP, a full LP, and they managed to talk them into it. They decided finally to go with Sub Pop if Sub Pop would do the full album. Bleach is literally 1 guitar track, 1 bass track, 1 drum performance, and 1 vocal performance, and sometimes a little bit of guitar overdubbed or a little backing vocals overdubbed. But that's the record. It's basically how they played it. You know, I just pressed record. You know, and of course, you know, by my choice of which mics to use and how to record it and how to EQ it, of course, you know, I was sculpting the sound to that extent and, you know, helping be a critical ear and giving them, you know, critical feedback. But by and large, you know, arrangements didn't change. Anything that I would, there's a reason why it doesn't say produced by Jack Endino on the record, because really I just engineered it. I mean, it was sort of produced by everybody, or perhaps produced by nobody. It sounds like the band sounded at the time. It's a pretty